and start the recording there as well.
Okay.
Alright. Good job waiting for the healing there. That's a good idea. Alright. I'd be a little bit more spammy with shots. Sometimes we're taking pretty long breaks from shooting where we could have been shooting more often. Alright. So, aim-wise, we seem to be struggling to hit some shots. Oh, we actually just accidentally left off the edge there. Looked like it was an accident there. So just make sure we're paying attention to our jump bar. Then... Let's see. That's, yeah, that's a pretty decent dragon.
I just have a disclaimer because I started playing Hanzo like just a week ago
Yeah.
because I use the main soldier and McCree and Ash.
Okay.
And I moved on Hanzo because I think he is a really funny character because he can one shot.
Yeah.
Just because of that.
Okay, good awareness of where the soldier was. Okay. Once again, maybe like not shooting a ton, and then, yeah, looks like we need some to just make sure practicing aiming there. So like when it comes to aiming, why don't you pause for a little bit? Let's talk a little bit on aiming. So,
Okay.
So let's see, when it comes to aiming, so far we're missing a bunch of shots. So something I might recommend, and just already going off of like how you're warming up, is I might recommend rather than going and warming up against bots, which are very different than playing against actual opponents, right? When you go up against bots, they're moving in straight lines and they're moving in patterns, and they're also at the same time, you're not going to have other things shooting at you. They're not going to be shooting back. They're not going to be using abilities. So it's kind of like a little bit unrealistic to actual gameplay. Something I might recommend instead is to do tryhard free-for-all, and that tryhard free-for-all is a really good environment for practicing mechanics, as when you're in a tryhard free-for-all, there's no objectives, there's no teammates to worry about, so it's just you and your duels, but there's still the realistic elements of it being an actual opponent, and they're using abilities, and they're shooting back at you. So I'd probably recommend using that and practicing at your mechanics in between queues, and also to warm up for the day, instead of trying to, instead of just going up against bots. Besides that, when it comes to aim, make sure that we're leading our shots. Since Hanzo is a projectile character, make sure we're aiming just a little bit ahead of where people are moving, whereas we've been kind of trailing behind with a couple of our shots. And then why don't you press play and continue on? I'm gonna take a look and see if there's some more that I can see. I think you're out of your perspective at the moment.
No. Okay. Oh, okay.
Oh.
On a map like that, I would pick something like soldier. Oh, never mind. Maybe Ash or Torbjorn or Junkrat maybe. But
Okay, so it seems as though you typically like flex around like that and pick like map dependent.
yeah, but honestly, I just go like McCree usually.
You just go McCree usually. Okay, so
Yeah, so something like this, and then if they go, I counterpick characters like Reaper or Hanzo.
okay. So yeah, just same as before. Just I'll be a minute or so. I'm looking for something to talk about, and then I'll just mainly try to talk in between fights and when you're not in the middle of shooting at things. At least for the very start until we go over some of the main points.
Go Ryan. Go in.
All right, so we might talk about cross replacement when we're out of this game. Besides that, we ended up just messing up our flashbang, using it when they're too far away. And then finally, we ended up just kind of sitting there when we knew they were coming up on the right side. So if we knew they were coming up, it might have been maybe a good idea to like back away and like run a little further away. Use some cover, possibly dropping off high ground might have been an option there. So just make sure thinking about those situations a little bit more clearly.
My aim is fucked, really fucked.
Mm.
Usually, I can assure you, usually is a little better, just a little.
All right, so I've seen a couple instances where we've been a little bit out in the open. Just remember that good positioning is the usage of cover, whereas bad positioning is the absence of cover. So we just want to make sure we're not standing out in the open where there's no cover at all. So like right now, just for example, just making sure we're using cover. Okay. All right, so the fight was over anyways, but we did end up going aggressive, even though they were trancing. So just keeping our eyes on that and making sure we're not going aggressive when they have a trance active.
Mamma donna, che schifo.
Okay, very nice shots. Possibly in that situation, if you see your team's not going to touch it, push in and like roll and try to touch point. But besides that, very nice play, good 4K. And maybe push those guys who are on high ground, look to stagger them. Right now we're just kind of sitting here, so might want to go stairs and push them off high ground. Yep.
Ah.
Okay. In between fights, usually it's a very good idea to rotate back up high ground. So we'll go a little bit more in depth on that after the game is over. But we're just kind of sitting around in between fights, whereas a lot of times we want to get to the best positioning possible. Oh, so in that situation, maybe backing up a little bit slowly, not noticing the BAP was there until it's too late, and then just not really using cover to the best of its ability. So probably say the main one was backing up sooner, as we just kind of after we got the kill in the summer, we just sat there.
Yeah.
Very nice. Okay. Make sure that when you're using High Noon, there's actually people to shoot at with it, because otherwise they just end up going around the corner. So make sure that usually it's a good idea to go for it when they're out in the open, when they can't really move away from it. So remembering that good positioning is usage of cover, bad positioning is the absence of cover, so that applies to the enemy team too. If they're in an absence of cover, then you can High Noon them and shoot them very, very easily. Right, and then they can't get away.
Ah.
Very nice.
Oh my fucking god.
Oh, so whenever we die, usually it's a good chance to, because deaths are obviously mistakes, they're bad. So usually we want to pay attention to like, why did I die, right? Think of the reasoning behind it, so that we can look to prevent it from happening. So for example, on that last one, what do you think maybe the reason was?
Not being aware of the Reinhardt position
Yep,
because I knew
exactly.
that he was dead.
Exactly, right? So awareness, right? Paying attention to the Reinhardt, and then therefore we can look to stay alive there. So make sure we're just paying attention to the reason in which we're dying. Typically, the four main reasons why people die are poor positioning, absence, or sorry, I'm messing up a little bit there. Poor positioning, lack of awareness, over-aggression, and a misuse of abilities. Okay. They're in this very nice shots once again, though I would recommend making sure we're waiting until we're around the corner before we're high nooning, right?
Yeah, that was a bit early.
Everyone's doing good except
Okay.
for ball, I guess.
No, I should have gone maybe high ground. No, because I was
Yep.
alone.
Yep.
Or not? Oh no, I was not alone. Oh, oh I'm bad as fuck, boy.
Alright, so in that situation, that was a little bit over-aggressive, right? So again, paying attention to deaths, and we can take a look at that and think, okay, maybe a little over-aggressive to where, first off, we just lost the duel. Secondly, like, anybody on their team could have just dropped on top of you and you would have died, right? Because you were way, way far forwards, without cover, without team support, and then therefore, anybody could have dropped on you and you would have died there, even if you'd won the duel against Ash.
Ah.
So when walking back to the fight there, possibly like if you see where the fight's happening, if you see the fight's happening on the like right side, you could walk out right side instead of out left side, and then you get back to the fight sooner. You have cover while you're walking back, making sure we're not standing on the open, even when walking back from spawn, because then that ends up getting us killed. Very out in the open there, right? Make sure he's in cover.
Ah.
Okay, very nice. All right, so
Hmm.
our mechanics after the first, and that's possibly just because we warmed up, but then I also saw, even within the replay, the mechanics weren't looking too great, but then all of a sudden the mechanics looked amazing. It like at just kind of suddenly after the first like couple of minutes. Do you feel like you typically have a problem with like consistency, and like sometimes you feel really fantastic with your mechanics and then sometimes you feel trash with it? Is that maybe a problem that you have?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And so let's do some diagnosing, see if we can find out the issue with that. Do you feel like you have a problem with tilting at all?
Mm,
Or alternatively, do you feel, do you, when you lose, do you go on long lose streaks where you lose again and again and again and again, or
sometimes it happens,
hmm. So is
but uh, I don't. Maybe sometimes I'm not consistent because of tilting or because of loose tricks.
hmm.
But I don't know. Maybe sometimes I'm just doing good, and we win a match because I played really good, and then the next match my aim is fucked, no, completely fucked.
Hmm.
I don't
So
understand.
yeah, so then alternatively, like let's think there's some other options. Um, hmm. Do you feel like you have confidence issues while you play, that like sometimes you don't feel like you're doing good, and then therefore you don't do good. I've known some people who've had confidence issues where like they do really good when they think they're gonna do good, and then when they don't think they're gonna do good, they don't do good.
You see, my aim right there was really bad because I tried for some. I think they were a bit difficult shots,
Mm.
but usually some of them I could have hit them, but no, today
Yeah,
no.
we'll talk more in
Yeah.
depth on it after the game is over here. Yeah, main is not the way usually that your team wants to go. In a lot of cases, if you ever do want to, you can maybe like say group up with me and start walking high ground, or you can say it in chat, because main is probably like the worst option you could go for here in pushing somewhere. Right.
Oh, that was really bad.
What?
Really bad.
So why do you think we died there?
No, because there was Bob, there was Hash.
Mhm.
I just walked. I sometimes I don't think.
So the reason why we died is because we walked straight through the open, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you kind of just zone out sometimes and you kind of go on autopilot and you're not really paying attention?
Yeah, probably. Oh,
Okay, so we'll talk about that after we're done here.
fuck you, Anna. Okay. Oh, allora.
No, make sure we're not rolling into the visor, right? So, again, kind of awareness. You know, we heard he's visoring and then we just kind of roll into it there. Making sure we're using cover. Besides that, that's unfortunate with like the sleep shatter. Okay, here might be a good idea to go and contest high ground. Right now, we've already wasted a lot of time just kind of walking down main, but going and helping soldier take down high ground pushes them off high ground, gives you high ground, and then, like I said, we'll talk about all the reasons why you love high ground after this game is done. Okay.
Oh, carry.
And make sure we're not pushing too far forwards because they're gonna be walking back soon, and we don't want to get caught out on our own.
Missing shots. Nothing new. Oh, okay.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice.
Oh, okay, okay.
Oh. When someone's next to you, make sure you flash at the floor. That stops it from just sailing past them.
Okay, my bad.
Alright, so pushing a little far forwards, we end up missing the mercy. And then when you look to flash someone that's close to you, flash at the floor so it activates on the floor, and then that stops it from just sailing past them if you were to miss it.
Soldier difference right there. Oh. Anna is dead. I'm missing really a lot of shots. I think I thought I could hit that flashbang.
Flashbang, yeah, just slightly out of range with it, yeah.
Oh, Risa, what are you doing?
Possibly in that situation, right, just to make sure you're on them, you can roll towards them. Request healing when you're low, that's going to get you healing faster, and make sure you're not sitting at 86 HP.
Anna cannot heal me, so I'm just gonna take this. Can I hide? No, I can't.
Okay.
I'm.
Okay. At the moment, we're not doing anything but staggering ourselves, because ultimately we're going to die here. There's no way that we make it out, right?
Yeah.
So in that situation, we're just, either, we're dying late, and then now our team has two decisions. Either they walk in without us, in which case they're going to lose, they're going to be at a disadvantage, or they have to wait for us, in which case we've just wasted a lot of time, right? So if you see a fight's lost, right, so, then try to get out if you can, and if you can't get out, let them kill you, right? On top of that, I'd probably recommend just demeching D.Va and then just letting her stay out of mech, and then that way you can have her demech to the next fight.
This is not contendable, I think.
Uh-oh, kind of rolled into that one. Again, request healing.
Okay. Oh, what? That was a lot of damage. Oh, I didn't see the Rhino. I really didn't see him.
Yep, so why do we die there then?
Because I was too pushed without a front line.
Too far out of cover. We didn't see Reinhardt, so poor positioning, over aggression. We misused abilities because we rolled out into the open, and then also we didn't see Reinhardt, right? So that could be audio awareness, right? Listening to your environment. All right, press tab real quick before you leave the game. Oh. No, we left there. It's all good. I think I'm trying to remember. We had a lot of deaths. Just in general, I think we had 9 after the first round, or maybe after our first death, and then we died a couple more times. So I'd say overall, maybe we had something around the range of 14 deaths that game, something of that sort. Let's see how much.
Probably.
What time do we have here? We have 21 minutes. Don't hop into a game. We're not gonna have time to finish another one here. So I'm gonna talk for a bit, and then we can go over some stuff. So first off, let's talk on survivability, right? And then I think you can probably look to stop streaming your screen, as we probably will need to get back to that. Okay, so let's talk about some things. All right. So when we are playing and we want to make sure we're staying alive. Obviously, deaths are bad, whoop-de-doo, and we've already talked about how to identify deaths, but let's talk about in depth why deaths are bad, so you make sure you pay extra close attention to them. When we go and die, right, every death is 10 seconds of respawning and then 10 seconds of walking back, which means that every death is basically 20 seconds. And if we, for example, died in the last game 14 times, that means that we're dead for 4 minutes and 20 seconds of gameplay, right? Which is
that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. You're correct, right? That's the amount of time we could be getting 3 high noons, maybe 4. That's the amount of time we could be getting a whole heck of a lot of kills, doing a lot of things. And you have to remember that when you're dying, it's not just that you're getting no value, you're also leaving a negative impact. You are making it so that your team is now more likely to lose that fight. That's your impact on losing the fight. So we want to make sure we're trying to not die and stay alive, because you can have the best mechanics in the world and be dead the entire game and not being able to use them, right? So make sure we're focusing on staying alive and survivability. Now let's talk about a couple other things. I think we had a really good crosshair placement, but just let's or good crosshair placement in some regards. Now let's just like go through that one more time. But I think for the most part we keep our crosshair head level, which is very good. Continue to do that. Make sure you keep that up. But besides that, make sure we're also pre-aiming where we know people are going to be. Sometimes the sauce mess up with this, but that just means that we know bots on the right side, so we're gonna pre-aim at head level right side. This just makes the shots much easier to hit. They kind of just walk into the shots, whereas sometimes we just kind of be like, I noticed sometimes we'd like look at the wall or something like that when we should be looking here. Same thing, we'd look at head level, left side, and that way we turn the corner and hit headshots. These guys are on a slope, so the same way we look down on a torb and up on a tank, we're gonna look down on these guys. So when we turn the corner, we're already looking at the head, right? Besides that, let's talk consistency, because you felt like that was a problem. So if we feel like consistency is a problem, how do you get consistent and how do you improve at things? These both are answered by the same thing, right? You get consistent and you improve by focusing while you play. Now, what that looks like and how it works is while you're playing, you're going to make sure that you're not autopiloting, that you're not just playing to play, and sometimes contrary to popular belief that you're not just purely playing to win, as when you just play to win, you end up stagnating and staying where you are, whereas when you play to improve, then you actually start going places, you start winning more. Now what that looks like within your own gameplay is while you're playing, you're going to pick something out to improve on. So let's say, for example, survivability, because we were talking about that. You're going to pick out survivability and you're going to think in your head, survivability, stay alive, stay alive, stay alive, stay alive, right? The entire time. The entire game, you're just going to remind yourself over and over and over and over again, right? This keeps you engaged. It makes sure that you are focusing while you're playing, that you're not just randomly zoning out if you're constantly reminding yourself. When you constantly remind yourself to stay alive, well, now you're going to be thinking about it more often, which means you're probably going to stay alive more often. Now, when you stay alive more often and you do this for a long enough period of time, since you don't play super often, it might take you a little bit longer, but let's say like, you work on it for like a week or so, right? And now you're looking a lot better on survivability and you've started to form a habit of survivability, and then therefore you die a lot less, and then you can move on to something else and you no longer need to worry about survivability because it's just kind of coming naturally now. You no longer need to put so much attention and effort into it because it's just a habit. And then that's where consistency comes in. Is consistency happens when you make habits, when you form habits. When you are inconsistent, right, that means that you have to be thinking about something for it to work, right? If I need to be thinking about my aim for my aim to be doing good, that means I don't have good habitual aim. Whereas if I work on my aim to the point where it just comes naturally, then that is where you're at a good point, right? Like, so for example, I still need to warm up if I were to go and try to play at like my level, but if I were to go into like let's say like anything below 4K, I could go in without having any warm up and be able to have pretty solid aim because I understand the aiming fundamentals, I understand, and I just have good habitual aim because I practiced that aim for 4,000 hours of the game, right? So aiming is such a habit and so ingrained in me that it doesn't take as much effort anymore to just have a really solid aim. So work on it and stay consistent with it. Now I would say when it comes to that, don't try to do everything all at once. We've talked about a bunch of things. If you try to do everything all at once, that will get overwhelming and you're not going to know what to do next. Instead, focus on one category of things or 1 to 3 smaller things within a category. Right? Does that all make sense so far? You hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I said.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. I didn't hear a response. I said, did that all make sense so far?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. All right. So then let's see some other things. So, other things. Are you familiar with McCree's new roll tech that is in the game at all? I haven't seen you use it.
I've seen it. I know that you can like jump over little high places, but I didn't really try it.
Yeah, I'd recommend learning it because it's just really handy. There's so many different situations where you can get value out of it. Even just using it while you normally roll around, it will muffle your roll sound. So that will give you more like a little bit more of a sneaky value, as well as allowing you to get places that you couldn't otherwise get before, or like if I'm just trying to do something like this. Actually, I don't think I'm gonna be able to make that. Yeah, I can make that if I try to go for it. But there's a lot of situations while you're playing where you can just get to places that you use it. So I'd look to practice it. How it works is you just press spacebar immediately before you roll, and then that allows you to do a jump roll like that. And it takes a little bit of practice. My first time I tried it, it took me about like 5 minutes to even get it on the first try. But you have to press it one then the other immediately, and then yeah, just keep practicing at it. I'd recommend basically like any time you try to roll to. Especially like if you're walking back from spawn or something, to practice at it, just because you can get really good at it and really consistent at it and whatnot. Besides that, let's talk a little bit more. Let's see what else was there. Positioning. Let's talk in depth on that, right? So let's see, right here. Right here, if we were sitting right here and the whole enemy team is standing over there, it takes us 1, 2, 3 seconds to get behind cover. Now, from this point, you cannot get shot at, so you're good, you're safe. But in that time it took us to walk here, we died, right? Whereas if we're right here, now, we can still shoot the people the exact same, except for now it takes us half a second to duck behind cover, right? Therefore, good positioning is the usage of cover, and bad positioning is the absence of cover. And we spent so much of our gameplay walking through long stretches of open space, right? We would leave our cover and just do this randomly, right? And then they'd just shoot us and mow us down, and we'd be like, oh, now I'm dead, right? And obviously we just talked about why deaths are bad, and therefore why positioning is good. And positioning's all over the good covers all over the place, right? You have slopes, you have pillars in between shots, when you're reloading, when you're when you just are getting shot at, when you need cover, right? You have corners, right? You have random objects there sitting around, like the payload, pillar, corner, doorway, corner, right? Besides that, high grounds. We rarely went high grounds, and then when we did, it was because I mentioned it, and it's kind of hesitant. High grounds are fantastic. Look to take them. From here, it all acts as natural cover, the whole thing. They can't see us now. They can see us now. They can't. They can see us now. They can't. Right. So all of high ground acts as natural cover. On top of that, 2/3 of the characters in the game can't reach you without using the stairs, and then the ones that can most of them need to use abilities, which means that now they're down a cooldown, right? And then that adds an additional layer of survivability. And then another point is that we have a ton of visibility. We can see over here and over here and over there and over here and over there, right? But then we're on a low ground, we can't see over there, right? Or any of the high ground, right? So we lose on visibility. And then also, as I mentioned in game, the enemy team also loves high ground. So when we take high ground, we can test them off of high ground and rip the advantage away from them, right? So high ground's great. Look to take it. Rotate there in between fights. Don't drop randomly from it if you don't need to. Let's see. Was there anything else we wanted to talk about? I think High Noon was pretty good. Maybe sometimes where we did it. I'd probably say the biggest thing with High Noon was we would use it when there wasn't really anything to High Noon, right? We'd use it when they're all inside near cover, rather than using it when they are now out in the open, right? When they're no longer, right? When this bot's right here and he can't do anything to run away, right? So make sure we're using it when they can't run away and they're out in the open. Besides that, let's talk about off-angling. So off-angling, right, is something you use to get to the things you want to shoot at, right? Typically, you want to shoot at supports and DPS because tanks are really difficult to kill, and they have shields and tanking abilities and armor, and on top of that, they just don't output the same statistical value that supports and DPS output, even though they're a very important role still. Their job is to create space, not do healing or damage, right? In any case, we want to get to those other characters, but if we're sitting on the front line the entire time, we're never going to be able to get to those other characters easily. And we largely, I would say in that game, we spend a large amount of time shooting at Reinhardt, Shield, and Diva, right? Very large amount of time shooting at those guys, and like I said, those are guys that are going to be the very difficult things to actually kill, so we don't want to be shooting at those things whenever possible. That's not to say that we never shoot at them. We can shoot at them when they're low, out of position, when they're the only thing to shoot at, but we don't want to shoot at them when we have the option to. and we want to actively seek out the other characters if we can. Now, one way to do that is to take off angles, right? So if the enemy team is there and our team is here, this is the main angle. An off angle would be if we just came over here real quick, right? Now we just got past the shields and the tanks and gotten straight to the back line. We're creating a crossfire effect to where now the team is going, do we look at McCree or do we look at the team? We get a surprise flank angle where they're not even looking at us until we're already on top of them. Overall, it's going to be very good for you. It's very, you get in, get a right click or whatever, right, get a kill real quick, and then we just are out instantly. It's very safe. It's very fast. That's an off angle, right? Same thing again, enemy team, our team, we go pew, 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 right? Take a couple seconds here, rotate up to high ground. Now, it didn't take us very long. It's very fast. It's very safe up here, and we can immediately get to the back line and shoot at things we want to shoot at with very good positioning, right? So that's, again, high grounds most of the time act as off angles if they're below you. If they're a mile away, then it doesn't really, because if they had a shield here, the shield would just be blocking people behind them. But if they have a shield here, then the shield's not really blocking anyone unless they look up, right?
About that, I have a huge struggle on about shooting things below me.
Yeah, well, first off, I would mention that, like, you don't get better at that without. I would agree with you. That is true, because fundamentally that's how it works in FPS games and in Overwatch, is that when you're looking down or up, it is more difficult to hit shots because of just how aiming works, right? You technically have, because it's kind of like, it's hard to describe the science of how that works, but you technically have more mouse space when you're going left to right versus when you're looking up. Like, you see how like I kind of spin in the circle. There's not a lot of mouse space that covers that, so when you look up, it's different, and then therefore if you don't really work at it, it doesn't get better. So if you never take high grounds, then you'll never know how to shoot off of high grounds, right? So look to take high grounds and you'll be able to practice at that. Besides that, like we've been mentioning, focus on your aim while you're playing. You know, make sure you're hitting shots, you know, and it's just practice, right? You're not going to get better if you don't practice, and if you're not good at hitting your shots, and it's been, and, you know, if you are intentionally focusing on hitting shots from high grounds and you're taking high grounds consistently, and it's been, you know, like a couple weeks, then come back to me and message me and be like, hey, this isn't working, what's wrong, right? And then I can get back to you over that, because then it might be a different problem. But yeah, that's what I'd say. It's just, I haven't really seen you on high grounds very often, so of course your high ground skills are not going to be too great if you're not taking high grounds. So, let's see, was there anything else I wanted to review? I think that is about it. We have 6 minutes left, so let's real quick put that all into the main points of the session and do like a quick little review along with that of just like what did we really talk about here. So, on McCree, right, with ability usage, honestly, there wasn't a ton that we talked about. Flashbang, just making sure we're sticking within range. It's 10 meters away in case you're unaware of that, right? If we step 11 meters, then we're actually out of range of it. Look at the floor on people, roll, look to do the new air roll, make sure we're not rolling out into the open, and then overall, honestly, ability usage wasn't too bad. It was more like a low to medium priority for you to work on. Ultimate usage are a couple things, like make sure we can actually see the enemy team when we're ulting, and maybe a couple of them we weren't too safe, but besides that, I don't think High Noon usage was really terrible at all, and then probably like a low to medium as well on the priority list for you to work on. Mechanics, sometimes we had very, very excellent, like, just general mechanics, and then other times we had pretty garbage general aiming, right? So consistency definitely was a thing within mechanics especially. So make sure we're focusing on getting our shots to be consistent by practicing at it. Try hard free-for-all instead of going for bots, warming up before we play, or while you're in queue to play. Make sure you're focusing on your aim while you're playing, if that's the thing you want to focus on at the very least. Besides that, make sure we're keeping good crosshair placement, aiming at head level, aiming where we know people are going to be. Sometimes we would just kind of we just sit around for a little bit, and make sure you're just constantly trying to do stuff that's called actions per minute. We didn't really talk very much about that, but make sure you're not really taking random pauses and breaks, because sometimes we would just go like pew, 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 and then we just kind of back off for like, you know, this time, and then we'd go back and go pew, 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 and it's just like, oh, well, why did we pause, right? So then besides that, target priority, make sure we're not spending the whole game shooting at tanks, but we're shooting the things we want to shoot at, so DPS and supports, and then even within DPS and supports, actively seek out the easiest things to kill. Don't just shoot at the other things if you don't want to. Then overall, all of that probably goes up to like a medium priority for you to work on. Positioning, make sure we're using cover, make sure we're not walking out in the open, make sure we're taking high grounds, make sure we are rotating there in between fights into better positioning in between fights, make sure we're not pushing way too far forwards as we got a little over aggressive in a lot of instances and just pushed into their spawn or something like that, or into their team. Make sure that and then that does seem to be pretty much the main points. And overall, that probably goes to like a medium high, because there are a lot of instances where you just were not in great positioning. And you gotta remember that you can have the best mechanics in the world and have garbage positioning, and then your positioning sets up your mechanics, and you won't be able to do anything, right? Same thing if you're dead constantly. If you're dead constantly, or if you have bad positioning, you're not gonna be able to use excellent mechanics. Okay, now moving on. Awareness, make sure we're paying attention to our environment, watching when we're low health, requesting healing. This is going to get you healing sooner. Make sure that we are watching what's happening around us, right? Where's our team at? Where's the enemy team at? Watch when fights are won and lost, right? Don't just sit in there. Don't stagger yourself. Let them kill you, or get out if you can, right? Besides that, just in general, a lot of odds and ends of just pay attention to this and that, right? Overall, not a like super high thing. I'd probably say awareness was like a low to medium to maybe a medium, around that range. And then finally we have survivability, making sure we're staying alive. Don't die. Dying is bad, right? Every death is 20 seconds. Don't don't look to die, because that's your impact on losing fights, and then we just lose out on so much time and value when we're dead, right? Focus on the reasons why you die. You die from misuse of abilities, from a lack of awareness, from poor positioning, and from overaggression, and we probably died from each of those probably a bit, like, almost evenly. Besides, maybe I'd say the only one was like misuse of abilities was probably the least amount, but other than that, we died from the other three a ton. So look to stay alive, and then you'll be able to do a lot more. Do you have any questions about anything we've gone over? Just anything else at all?
No, I just completely agree with you.
All right, so then let's see. Let me stop the recording there.